Hello and welcome to Seattle City Makers. I'm your host, Jon Scholes. Welcome to our latest episode, everyone. I'm joined by Joe Fugere, who is a fourth-generation Seattleite and the founder and CEO of Tutta Bella restaurants. Joe's Italian grandparents arrived in America and settled in the Beacon Hill neighborhood, and today, Joe and his team run 5 pizzerias around the Seattle area, including a mobile food truck and 2 in-store restaurants inside QFC Groceries located in Kirkland and the University District in Seattle. And Tutta Bella's mission has always been to provide food that nourishes lives daily with welcoming service and authentic handcrafted Italian fare. And Tutta Bella was the first officially certified Neapolitan pizzeria in Seattle. Joe and I discuss the origin story behind Tutta Bella, how he transitioned out of a career at Starbucks into the restaurant business. We talk about making it through the pandemic, the growth of their retail business, his new and upcoming operations downtown, a few new spots that are open, and one evolved Tutta Bella that will soon open. The story behind his famous pizza delivery to President Obama aboard Air Force One up at Payne Field in Everett, his first job, and his perfect Saturday in Seattle. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the CEO and founder of Tutta Bella Restaurants, Joe Fugere. Thank you for coming by to do this.
It's my pleasure.
And it's 20 years, which I didn't realize until reading through your bio and the About page on Tutta Bella, but you're celebrating 20 years, right?
It was January 2nd. Of 2004 that
in
we
Columbia
opened.
City.
Columbia City.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe let's start there. For those that don't know, and I'll put myself in that camp, what is the origin story around Tutta Bella? How'd you get in the restaurant business?
Well, 20 years ago, I was going through what some would call their midlife crisis. I was working for a great company. They have a mermaid in their logo. You might know them. And had a great job, but felt like there was something missing, you know, that idea of having something meaningful in your life and feeling that you want to make a difference kind of hits you at that age. You know, you do the math when you're in your mid 40s. You're like, okay, what are the next 20 years going to look like for me? I've been in my career for 20 years, and what do the next 20 years look like?
Yeah,
you know?
I've started counting in months as I get older. How many months left? You know, that's a different perspective. But go ahead.
It does. And so I contemplated. I had a coach actually who I spoke with, who was my former boss at Starbucks, and she sent me on this mission, an assignment: make a list of all the things that you love, and more importantly, make a list of all the things that you're good at. And if the two can intersect, that's probably a good sign that whatever you choose is you're going to have more likely success.
Pizza on both sides of the ledger there?
No, not at all. This is interesting. So my list on what I love had to do with travel, not doing some nonprofit work, because I was in middle age and thinking, I'm going to do something meaningful, architecture, design, and food. And I realized she actually sent me on this mission to go talk to architects and landscapers and travel agents. Back then, travel agents weren't around much. I mean, that was a dying breed, right? Travel agents, and nonprofit. And so I met with some executive directors and learned that running a nonprofit is about asking for money. A big part of it is not real good at that. So I couldn't check that box. And, you know, I was a little too late to the game to become an architect and probably a chef. So I circled back, and because I had started the conversation saying I want to get out of the hospitality industry because that's what I'd been doing, my formal education from WSU's in hospitality business management. And I started the conversation with her, I don't want to stick in hospitality, I want to do something different. I ended coming full circle, and it was her idea that I should take all of those things that I love, travel, architecture, design, nonprofit or community work, and cooking, and maybe roll it into my own type of restaurant, not somebody else's, but something that I could do myself, and create a new business, So that's what I did, and that's what Tutta Bella was all about, and it incorporated my personal values. You know, I didn't have to report to anybody, which I think, if I was really being honest with myself, I think I would have known that it was probably having a boss that was probably more of an issue at in my mid 40s than it was about not having a good fit. in the hospitality business because at heart I'm a hospitalitarian, if that's even a word.
I think you just made it one.
And so anyway, that was what I set off to do. And the thing about the restaurant business is it's low margin, as we all know. We've heard that, and it's high risk. Probably one of the highest risk businesses.
So were you going in with your own money?
Went with my own money. Took my some of my stock that I had, my stock options at Starbucks, and cashed them in and went in with my own money. Self-funded the first restaurant. But I figured here was my strategy. You have to pick a category that's popular. So the two most popular foods in America are burgers and pizza. Burgers didn't really resonate. Pizza did for a couple of reasons. I'm half Italian, my Italian heritage. And my grandmother, who growing up would remind us that the pizza we were eating in Seattle was garbage compared to her homeland, which was right outside Naples.
Yeah.
So
I heard the same thing from my grandma, her homeland was Buffalo, New York, but they have really good pizza, and she was Italian.
There's roots, right? There's a path. There's a path from Naples to
I think it's
New York
improved since then, but
I
certainly.
think it has. So that was one thing. I felt like if I could pick a category that was popular, my chances of succeeding in this business would be higher. And then execute better than anybody else. So best execution, popular category, my chances of success were better because they say that restaurants, I think 1 out of 10 might make it past 5 years. We're on 20, going on 21. So that was how I got into the business. When you pick a category and you want to be best in class, Google is your friend. I say that my grandmother and Google inspired me. Tutta Bella. But you start Googling the birthplace of pizza. Where did this all begin, and how do you define best in class?
Yeah.
Well, it's Neapolitan pizza with a 300-year tradition. That's how you define success. And I wanted to make that pizza that's been made since the 1700s and bring it to Seattle.
And no one really owned that space here in
Nobody
the city.
Here's what happened with all those post-world, whether it be World War I, World War II, immigrants from Italy. They all, especially after World War II, they felt like they had to acclimate. It was, don't bring authentic food to the U.S. unless you're cooking it for your family. But if you're cooking it for the public, the American public, you got to Americanize it. So many of these people from the South, because that's where all the poverty was, Calabria, Sicily, Naples, they acclimated and they took this beautiful pizza cooked in wood-fired ovens with Italian flour and tomatoes grown in the volcanic soil of Mount Vesuvius and Americanized it. So American flour, American tomatoes. Well, it was hard to import post-World War II. So when I decided I was going to do this, and I didn't immigrate from Naples myself, a lot of these immigrants were a little bit, I wouldn't say that they were angry at me, but they were like, what do you know about authenticity? Well, I went back and studied it. You could have done this, 30 years ago.
So you're very practical and pragmatic in your approach to what you started, how you started it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think your heart too. I mean, even pragmatism aside, when you taste Neapolitan pizza in Naples, you can't help it. I mean, your eyes roll back of your head. And that happened to me. That and espresso. People don't realize that espresso was invented in Naples as well. It's called invented. The idea of gravity and pressure applied to espresso, to coffee, was started in Naples. So anyway, I had my first Neapolitan pizza in Naples. Eyes rolled back of my head, and I thought, I just have to find out where these ingredients are really from. How can I source them, bring them to the U.S., and recreate this pizza? Now it sounds pretty easy. The problem is that the wood-fired ovens had to come from Naples. All these different things that kind of add up, and we call the fifth ingredient love. It has to be instilled in it as well. So, that's, as a startup businessman, had never owned a business before. These were all pretty big challenges.
Was it happenstance that you opened your first place in one of Seattle's great Italian neighborhoods, the Italian Gulch of Columbia City, with its roots and heritage there? Was that just sort of where you ended up? A
little bit of happenstance, a little bit of maybe back to pragmatism. It was the most affordable retail space. If I am going to tell you what I paid, because my rent's gone up since then, but it was $1 a foot. back in
pretty good deal,
2004.
even in today's
Or
market.
$12 if you take time, per month. So $12 a foot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just unheard of. So it's kind of warehouse kind of pricing for retail.
Yeah.
So the bar was low there. There was a restaurant that had failed in the space that I'd really admired, and I kind of wanted to honor them. So I paid off their bank loan and inherited all their equipment and the tables and chairs. My friends and neighbors volunteered to paint the walls, and I opened up the restaurant literally with one employee and 7 or 8 friends and family. And it was after about a week of being in business that I turned to my friend and said, who's an architect, who was helping out, volunteering at night, and said, I think I need to hire some people. And we went from 7 employees to 20 almost overnight, and the rest is history.
Wow.
I mean, that Columbia City location was very successful. The other reason that I opened there, I think you know this, that the Rainier Valley is affectionately referred to as Garlic Gulch.
Garlic Gulch. Yeah, I said Italian Gulch earlier.
Because of all the Italian immigrants.
Gulch.
So I grew up on Beacon Hill, which is just above the valley, and in an Italian immigrant community. And so that was the other thing I thought of, that all these friends and family, because Italians have big families and are very networked, that I could at least rely on that network of friends and family to support the business.
And we were talking earlier, and you were down in Portland. You said this last weekend, giving some advice to a friend of yours who's got 1 restaurant there, looking to expand to 2. You obviously did that. What was the advice you gave her as she's contemplating going from 1 to 2, and what was your reflection on your experience?
She'd come up
beyond
to
your first in Columbia City.
Yeah, she'd come up to Seattle to visit the restaurants, and this was a follow-up visit. And before I could even have that conversation with her, she said, I think after my visit to Seattle, I realized I don't want to own more than 1 restaurant.
So you got on the ground there. She's like, I don't need you.
Let's
just go have fun.
Right. Well, going from 1 to 2 is difficult, and you're doubling everything. And I think it gets easier as you go along because you start to systemize things. But I never intended to open a second restaurant. It was going to be one and done. And the University of Washington had a school of entrepreneurship, and their class had a project to help a small business owner. So they chose me. I think somebody was a fan of Tutta Bella, and they created this survey, and they called it Joe Wants to Know. And it was multiple choice questions, and they handed out 1,000 of these surveys. Jon, over 980 were returned of 1,000 that were handed out. Like, it was a high return. They tell me that that's a pretty good return
Sounds
rate.
pretty good.
And I think the reason was people really wanted to give their feedback. And so there was all these, yes and no, A, B, multiple choice questions. And then there were 2 things that made a difference that kind of catapulted Tutta Bella to, where it is today. One was we asked for their zip code, which seemed like a reasonable request. And then there was an open-ended question on the bottom. Like, what would you like to see from Tutta Bella that we don't currently offer? And I thought people were going to say things like pastas or, more handcrafted cocktails or craft beers. So the answer to that question was, I'd like to see a Tutta Bella in my neighborhood. People were coming from north of the Ship Canal and eastern, the suburbs, Issaquah and other places. So when we tracked the zip codes, we found that a majority of our customers were coming from outside the 98118 zip code. So we tracked a great majority of them were north of the Ship Canal. And when I combined that tracking of their zip codes plus the fact that they wanted, the feedback was, I don't give a damn about craft cocktails. I just want a Tutta Bella in my neighborhood.
More pizza closer to me.
We started looking north of the Ship Canal, and that's how restaurant number 2 opened. It was double the size, and it's still one of our busiest restaurants, the one in Wallingford.
Yeah. So just sort of happenstance that the UW
all of the locations
team found you and
helped
you found your second.
That happened with
spot.
every location. We weren't not out looking. The landlords came to us. So with the third one, which is South Lake Union, Paul Allen's real estate arm, Vulcan, we're trying to create a neighborhood of local businesses in South Lake Union. So all the big chains of the country were not invited. They were out seeking beloved furniture stores and restaurants. And so they approached me and asked if I'd like to open a third. Again, I wasn't planning on it. And the same thing happened with our fourth and our fifth. So we have 5 restaurants today, but none of them were really prompted by us, looking out for a location. It was all based on landlords coming to us.
And you and I met a couple of weeks ago in a new operation for you, the ground floor of the Wren apartment building. For folks who haven't been through there yet, and I think you're close to opening another Tutta Bella location there, and then you've got some other things going on. For folks who haven't been there yet, what are the 3 things they will
so this will
experience? It was fabulous. If people
first
need to
of
check
all,
it out, but you can describe it in your own words.
John, if you've been to the building, I think it was the Daily Journal of Commerce that awarded it the Building of the Year last year. Most beautiful building of the year.
Design.
I think it was something about the design. It is really gorgeous. 41 stories of residential, high-end residential apartments. And I believe what's happening in residential, especially apartment development these days, is there's a lot of competition for amenities.
Yeah,
how do we stand out? Right.
Yeah.
And so in this particular building, they had built a bar. They hadn't operated yet, but it was just sitting empty with these beautiful Roche Bobois furniture, and it was like high end. And I went to go look at the restaurant because my lease was expiring at South Lake Union, and never closed a restaurant, but we were planning on moving to a new location. And this landlord heard about that and approached me. And it was a Canadian developer, and really wanted to offer this amenity for its residents in the neighborhood. So we looked at the restaurant space, and there was this empty lobby bar that was completely built out. And I inquired about that, and it turns out that they needed someone to run it, so offered to run that. And as we were exiting the building, it was an empty retail space. And the space had been designated as maybe a pet food store because there's there's a dog park across the street, a lot of pets in the neighborhood. And I kept thinking to myself, it really should be like a coffee bar, a gathering place for the neighborhood, because there's not a lot around that Denny Triangle. I call it Denny Triangle. I know other people define Denny Triangle a little differently, but to me, that's the triangle of Fairview and Denny.
Denny, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a triangular building. And so I talked to our realtor and the broker and said, why don't we pitch that Tutta Bella would take all 3 of this ground floor so that we can kind of control our neighbors, and we can offer this amenity, and we can manage it efficiently with the lobby bar, different day parts. We'd have breakfast, lunch, dinner, late night, especially because Live Nation is opening across the street.
Right.
So we'd have the late night as well.
Right.
And the broker at first said, I really don't think that the landlord's going to go for that. And I said, well, why? I'm wondering, why would you say that? Well, landlords don't really like to put all their risk with one tenant. If you have one bad tenant, you'll have 3 bad tenants. And of course, I'm glass half full. And I said, well, the opposite's true too. If you have one good tenant, you have 3 good tenants.
Then you got 20 years of track record
20 years of experience.
too, yeah.
So she pitched it, and they went for it. So I got a call back about 2 hours later that they want you to do this. So now we opened the lobby bar first because that was already built out. In April, we opened the Social Fabric, which is a neighborhood coffee bar. The idea of weaving together the fabric of society.
And you're bringing some market into there too, right?
In a little market.
Yeah.
So think of 7-Eleven on steroids. Like, it's all specialty foods and take grab and go items. And then next month we're going to open. We call it I don't want to call it an elevated Tutta Bella, but it's an evolved Tutta Bella. All the things that we've wanted to do for the last 20 years, we're going to put into this Tutta Bella. And the landlord has been so gracious in supporting us that I can't wait to open it. You'll have to come.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it out. We got in there before you're open, and the spaces are amazing. The lobby.
I think we want to have a DSA.
Yeah, we're going to do something.
We have to.
For sure. Yeah, I went home from touring that with you, and then we got on the roof and the rooftop amenities and the deck, and I was like, we're moving. And I didn't even see a unit there.
Right.
We haven't moved
your
yet.
Eye level.
I was just like, what a beautiful building, and then to be able to walk into the lobby of your residential building and have all of that is pretty phenomenal.
41st floor, you're eye level with the Space Needle. You're looking at the observation deck of the Space Needle, and it's like right there in your face.
And so you're doing catering and events up at that level as well.
So that was the other
for
thing
the building, which seems like a pretty clever, creative amenity in the arms race of amenities.
We struck that deal with the landlord, and we saw the catering off and said, well, could we could we be the official caterer? So, people have options if they want it. I don't think we're going to cater many sushi parties, but we'd have the option to if we wanted
pizza.
to. Right,
Yeah.
right. So no, I'm excited. I think, I don't think we're going to be adding a lot of locations for Tutta Bella, or certainly there was a lot of deferred maintenance during COVID and capital expenditures. So we're going back to the 5 locations and reinvesting. So we've remodeled our Bellevue location. We're moving our South Lake Union location. Columbia City, we're putting some, money back into, and our Issaquah location, the landlord is paying for some improvements that will start next year. So that just leaves Wallingford, and I think we'll be doing something there as well.
And you're also getting in or have gotten into the retail business. That's a big growing segment for you. How did that get started?
So it was a COVID. A lot of people talk about pivoting. It wasn't even a pivot for us. It was a survival strategy when all the restaurants closed down, and I supported the governor in this decision. You think back about what things were like back then.
Yep, what we knew or didn't know.
You didn't want to hang out in restaurants. And so we shut our dining rooms down and switched to delivery, which actually we learned a lot about what we weren't good at, which was we were not good at delivery. So we invested in equipment, we invested in technology. We reformulated our dough a bit to make it more transportable, and our business grew. Well, we went from 10 or 15% of our business to 100% because we had no other business. But now that we're post-COVID, our takeout and delivery is about 40% of our business.
So you've continued with delivery.
So
even if you figured out how to get better at it, it sounds like.
It's a little hard because of the third party fees are so so high and expensive, but it's here to stay. You just have to kind of absorb it. So during that time, we were also experimenting with a kiosk at 2 QFCs, the one in Kirkland Urban, which was their new concept. First QFC that had been open in 10 years, and their U Village, which is their highest volume. We built 2 kiosks that were serving Italian wood-fired pizzas, and in that space we had a little 6-foot deli case, and in the deli case it was the suggestion of the CEO at the time of QFC, why don't you throw some of your salads? We love your salads or your pasta dishes or your tiramisu, and we were going to put like Italian beverages and stuff in there, but we ended up putting our restaurant items in there, and they sold like crazy. It was a very successful test. So when the pivot happened or the survival happened, the CEO called and said, I really want to help out. That 6-foot case, we can't build kiosks in 59
And the kiosks
QFCs.
were staffed. They were staffed. It wasn't a vending machine.
Right. And if these kiosks, we can't put them in 59 locations, but we can give you a 6-foot deli case in 59 locations.
Yeah.
And how quickly can you roll that out? I said very quickly, and I hung up the phone, and I said to myself, how am I going to do this? Because we don't have a factory. We don't have a place or a commissary.
Yeah.
We had to do it out of a closed down kitchen in one of our restaurants.
Yeah.
So we got WSDA certified, and we started making salads and pastas, a dozen here, a dozen there, and then it grew to hundreds. And today we do almost 10,000 a day in our factory. So we closed down the restaurant, remodeled it after we built a factory. We call it the Culinary Innovation Hub in Soto. So we have a 15,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility that we're making grocery store, restaurant quality food in the grocery store. So we have gas-fired ovens. So we're doing these traditional pizzas and all of our restaurant recipe salads and my grandmother's recipe for tiramisu. And we're distributing now to hundreds of grocery stores, including 75 Costco's.
Wow.
So that side of the business in 2025 will exceed the restaurant division.
And you built that in 3-4 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2020. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. And it's growing as we speak. We're with Kroger now. We're in 6 states with our products.
So as you look back on 20 years of restaurants and now retail, what are some of your best memories, and what have you enjoyed most, and what's been sort of most challenging or things you've liked the least?
The challenging will always be staffing. because we're an industry, for better or worse, and I embrace this, it's a transitory job. I mean, we attract people who want to work part-time. They're students, they're single parents, they are people that are using this as a springboard to something else. They want to learn transitional skills. So you can't fight that. You have to just embrace it, but it will always be a challenge.
Did you work in restaurants growing up?
My first job.
Yeah.
It was, I have a story about that, but I was 16 years old.
Well, we have a question about that. We'll get to
okay.
it,
We'll talk about that later.
You can hold it.
And been in the hospitality business all my life. And so you just you learn to deal with it. But one of the highlights has to be experiences with guests. We serve, and I think any restaurant, if you were to ask any restaurant, how many guests do you serve over the course of a month? You'd be surprised at how much traffic even a little coffee bar gets, or a teriyaki place. We serve a stadium full of people every month in our Tutta Bella. So 50,000 people come through the doors of Tutta Bella. And that sounds like it's crazy, but we're not the busiest restaurant in town.
Yeah.
So when you think about that many impressions, and they're essentially on your manufacturing floor, right? It's not like customers of manufacturing facilities don't visit the floor, whereas in a restaurant, you're in the moment. So there are opportunities to really impress people on a daily basis. And I've had a lot of fun over the years doing that. But I think one of the highlights was we've served 2 American presidents, one of them on Air Force One, the other visiting our South Lake Union restaurant. So President Biden visited South Lake Union.
Did you know he was coming?
That morning I was introduced to him, and the person who introduced me to him was on Senator Patty Murray's staff and said, "Meet Joe, he has the best pizza in town." And I turned to him at the time and said, "You should come try it, while you're in town." And he turned to his chief of staff and said, "Let's make that happen," and walked away. Chief of staff walked over to me and said, "You know what you just did? You just turned my life upside down. This is a non-scheduled visit." We shut down traffic. I feel bad because we shut down traffic on Denny. Think about this, Denny and Westlake at 5:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
but it was a great
your
trip.
Neighbors didn't like you much, did they?
No,
they got the president in the neighborhood. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, right, exactly. And the other one was on Air Force One when.
How did that come about?
So
because you delivered. Was that your first delivery?
Well, do you know the story?
No.
We delivered to Payne Field in Everett, which pizza, especially Neapolitan pizza, it does not travel well.
Yeah.
So when the White House called, and by the way, if you ever get in your phone the number 202-000-0000, that's the White House.
Pick it up.
Just to let you know, pick it up. Don't think it's spam. So the White House calls, and I thought it was a prank at first, and said that the president is coming to Seattle and has requested your pizza because I had met him on a previous visit.
You want a small business advisory?
Yep. The Small Business Lending Act, which is a whole other story. And he had tried to come to Tutta Bella 3 times. They visit donut shops, and he went to Top Pot and a couple other places, but never made it to Tutta Bella. And we thought on the way back to Boeing Field, maybe. So in this particular twice he tried and couldn't make it. His schedule changed. So this time. We were going to meet in Wallingford on his way to, I still call it HECED, Alaska Airlines Pavilion at UW. And last minute, they had to change the plans, and they informed the president, we're not going to be able to make it to that pizza place.
No
he said, well, it's a pizza joint. Don't they deliver? So they called me and said, would you be willing to deliver pizza to the president on Air Force One? And I said, my first reaction, it was in Everett, and I said, our pizza really doesn't travel well. So I almost turned him down. I almost said no because I didn't want this pizza.
You wanted your product to be in tip-top shape.
But here's what we did. I called an oven manufacturer, and we arranged to have a 4,000-pound oven delivered to the tarmac. And we made pizza.
Oh, so you made it there. You didn't just warm it back up.
We made it
there.
And the local Mini Cooper dealer loaned us 3 Mini Coopers. And we fed the whole press staff and the president on Air Force. It was their meal going back from Everett to DC. And from what I've been told, it was the first time that a non-approved caterer had been approved to.
Yeah, do they make you taste it first? I mean, what's the security clearance your pizza had? The dog sniffed it.
The dog sniffed it.
Did they get to eat it?
And no.
Just sniff it. Yeah.
But the pilot came down from the cockpit and helped carry the pizzas back up into the plane. And then there's a picture, I should have brought it for you, of us standing on the steps of Air Force One. The pilot said, would you like a picture on the stairs? And I said, of course we did. So it
came all this way.
Me and my team.
Brought these ovens up here. Yeah.
A picture of us on the steps of Air Force One. Later, I found out that you cannot have in advertising the seal of the President of the United States in the same photo. So we had to kind of blur it a little bit.
Sounds like you did it.
We did it.
Asked
anyway.
for forgiveness.
Asked for forgiveness, right.
Did you ask President Obama to give you a Yelp review?
Well, he wrote a very nice letter.
That's right. I think I've seen it.
Did you see that?
Yeah,
I think I showed it to you.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Thanked me for I gave him a T-shirt.
Better than a Yelp review.
I think he wore the T-shirt, the Tutta Bella T-shirt, playing basketball.
Oh, man.
Once or twice. So that was
This is marketing you can't pay for, right?
Right, exactly. That was memorable.
So that oven supplier, you really owe one to them.
They paid for the crane. They paid for the flatbed truck to get it there. But do you know what was the most, it wasn't even difficult. The most interesting thing was speaking with the airport people, the manager of Payne Field. He's like, you want to do what? And the place that we put it was where all the Secret Service were parked.
Yeah.
And I think you know this. There are 2 Air Force Ones.
Right. The backup?
The backup.
Yeah.
So we went into the control room and they actually showed on a map, they had plastic planes and helicopters. Because there's the helicopter that flew him to Medina. He was on some kind of a fundraising. And we were watching them like plot out where the 2 planes were and where the 2 helicopters were. And you never really see that second Air Force One, do you?
Yeah,
but you
that's
hear
pretty
about
cool.
It. Yeah, so that was.
And that was Payne Field before the Payne Field we know today. So commercial air traffic in and out of there. That would have been a little more complicated.
The reason he was there, besides having to then fly to Medina, was he was doing a photo op in the cockpit of a 787. The Dreamliner was still
something to do with Boeing, right? Yeah.
Something to do with Boeing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Experience.
Yeah. You kind of pinch yourself. It's like, that really happened? You know? It's fun.
So we do conclude with 2 standard questions, Joe. One is, and you were getting to this, but what was your first job? Sounds like something in hospitality, the restaurant. Yeah, like you took a paycheck. Under the table? No. I mean, you get paid for mowing. Yeah, mowing the lawn, washing cars.
But my first, almost at the same time, I got my driver's license at 16. The day I turned 16, I went and took the test, and I was asking my mother if I could get the keys to her 1972 Buick Riviera. She was hesitant. So one day she said, sure, here. She dangled the keys. And I said, oh, thanks, Mom. She goes, oh, wait, there's a condition. You're 16, go find a job. You can take my car, but you have to go find a job.
Pay for your own gas.
I was on Beacon Hill. I drove down to Georgetown. And the first place I went, I applied for a job. And they were desperate. It was a fast food restaurant, Taco Time. The local the Tonkin family owned that business. And he said, when can you start? And I said, when do you want me to start? He goes, well, can you start right now? I said, well, I got to take my my mom's car back. Got to get permission. And so that was my first job at 16. But at the same time, I was working, you're going to love this story, John. Hostess, another local company, would hire people to dress up as mascots. So there was Twinkie the Kid, and I was Freddie Fresh Guy. And Freddie Fresh Guy was a loaf of bread. And I would go to grocery stores, and with Miss Seafair, so she was there with her staff, and I was Freddie Fresh Guy, and I would encourage customers to squeeze me to see how fresh I was. That was my job. Squeeze me to see how fresh I am.
Hopefully they didn't get confused and squeeze Miss Seafair.
That would be an HR nightmare today. Yeah. I don't know if that would be in the job description.
It seems very risky.
So those 2 jobs were
whole setup.
So Freddie Fresh Guy and a counter server at Taco Time were my first 2 jobs at 16.
Which one paid better?
I think I made $2.35 an hour at Taco Time, and I made it. I think the other Freddie Fresh Guy paid better because they paid you by the job, not by the hour.
Yeah, very good.
There we go.
That's a unique first job. And our final question: what's your perfect Saturday in Seattle? If you can design it from morning till evening.
Remember, I'm in the restaurant business. Saturdays.
I know. See, every single person in the hospitality industry that we have on Seattle City Makers gives me this answer, and I still
I
forget to caveat it for you.
I'd gotten to the point where I was taking Sundays off, and it was Sacred Sunday, and from a secular standpoint, Sacred Sunday. It's like I read the New York Times, and just kind of had my time.
Yeah.
That moved to Saturday when I got into the production business, because we now go dark on Saturdays, and we're very busy on Sundays getting ready for our Monday deliveries.
And the restaurants
now it's Sacred, and the restaurants are
still rolling.
They're
on
rolling.
Saturday.
They're rolling. They're rolling.
So you have no escape anymore. There's no time that's sacred.
So I have Sacred Saturday,
Yeah.
and boy, I don't want to take up too much time, but there's a list of things that I like to check off. I wouldn't say an avid gardener, but a gardener enthusiast. I really like foliage. I'm not into flowers, but really like foliage, and so I plant things with interesting foliage and watch them grow, if you will. I love to catch up on reading. One of my favorite things, honestly, I don't get to do it very often, is go to the Pike Place Market without any plans for the meal and plan, and then just see what inspires me. And I might buy some spot prawns and do make a risotto or whatever. I'll go to Cafe Campagna for breakfast, have a glass of champagne, and then do my Pike Place Market visit, and go home, do mise en place, cook. And that's one of my favorite ways to spend a Saturday. And I have grandkids in DC, so the FaceTime call is almost not obligatory, but it's a routine and a tradition that we have.
It sounds like a great Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for spending time with us, Joe, and for what you brought to Seattle, and more to come. And look forward to the opening of the evolved Tutta Bella. If that's is that what you're going? Is that what you're going with? The evolved?
Yeah, I mean between us. Oh, yeah. I guess now it's between us and a few others. But
we should say the menu's more expansive.
Yes.
The drink selection's more expansive. The space is
a little more elevated. That is a little more elevated. I would
yeah.
say. Yeah. Thanks to the landlord.
Yeah.
In this beautiful building. Yeah. But can I just throw this right back at you? Thank you for what you've done, Jon, over the years. Your name comes up, and it's just, people just speak so positively of the impact that you've had on downtown, and the tenacity sometimes that it takes to do what you do, and the love that you have of your job, it comes through. And I'm greatly appreciative of that. And I know the downtown community is as well.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. And it's a ton of fun, and it's all worth it. And we got a great city.
Yeah. Agreed.
Thanks to people like you that bring us great things and create and innovate, and we get to enjoy it. It's part of what makes this city so special. There are folks who will figure out their passion and follow it and bring it to the rest of us. So thanks to your executive coach for giving you that exercise way back when. That's a great exercise of to write those two things down and
I've
see where they cross over.
Times. Yes. Yeah. No, it's great.
Do they enjoy the pizza?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course.
How can you not enjoy Neapolitan pizza? I don't even take credit. Tutta Bella, we love Tutta Bella pizza. It's like, when you say you love Tutta Bella pizza, you mean you love Neapolitan pizza, because we're just carrying on the tradition, right?
Well, thanks for carrying it over to Seattle.
Yeah. My pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Joe. I all of a sudden am craving a pizza, a Leonardo, from Tutta Bella to be specific, with the milled tomatoes, Italian sauces, roasted red peppers, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Joe, for making time to come on Seattle City Makers and for what you're creating in our downtown and beyond. I want to close out with a recommendation of something you got to check out here in downtown Seattle. And in this case, I just want to lift up our great resource brought to you by the Downtown Seattle Association, loveseatown.com, your go-to one-stop shop for all the events and happenings in downtown Seattle. Loveseatown.com. It's a great listing of the variety of arts and cultural events, sports, the off the beaten paths, tours and festivals and markets that you might not know about. So check that out. There's a lot going on this fall in downtown Seattle, and we invite you to come check it out. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association, with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.